Welcome to the Elijah Rising podcast. Elijah Rising is an organization empowering women recovering from sexual exploitation. This episode is going to help you become more aware about the issue of sex trafficking and inspire you to take action.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Elijah Rising podcast. I am your host, Micah Gamboa, and today I have with us Joe Madison from Demand Disruption.
Hey, Micah.
We're super glad to have you. We're going to be talking today specifically about the role of technology and AI and VR specifically, coming down the pike, especially as it relates to buyers' behavior. So I know you have a lot to say about that. If you guys are more interested in Joe and his organization, Demand Disruption, you can check us out on multiple podcasts. He's been a guest on several, so I'm not going to reintroduce you to our audience.
Thank you for not calling me retread.
We just move into the questions.
Yeah.
No one needs to know.
Just roll right in.
They've been amazing. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in our culture, we have been seeing a lot of noise, right, about the advent of AI.
Yeah.
We kind of knew it was coming, but for those of us who buried our head in the sands or maybe don't know what's going on, we see a lot, especially in the realm of pornography. So AI as it relates to pornography and VR.
Yeah.
Can you educate our listeners a little bit on what you see happening now and maybe where you see it headed in the future?
Yeah. If we think about it, AI, actually, the subject matter in Hollywood movies has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I go back to the 50s, actually. There was robots and things that were humanoid, whatever. And so we see it in Hollywood. Now we see it in our real life. Art imitates life, and in this case, kind of backwards. As we see AI really start to reap benefits in technology, information, education, healthcare, it's just like anything. It's a tool or it's a weapon. And pornography has always really pushed the technological industry in different ways. And that sounds weird to say, I know, but the point of reference going all the way back to VHS cassettes. The only reason you know what a VHS cassette is, and we don't call them Betamax, is because the porn industry preferred VHS and killed that technology, right?
It's true. Laserdisc
was actually the first thing that was really pushing that was more content, better resolution, and the porn industry was right at the head of that. Now let's take that to this thing called the internet. Same thing. The need for video content, because that's where their customer base was going to be the most responsive, pushed high-speed internet. And so as we see this, and now we see AI, we're seeing that same influence. AI's technology is going to be applied throughout pornography, and has been, and currently is. Yeah. But unfortunately, I think we really scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we see simulations of videos, but we haven't even gotten to the tough morality questions. Wait, that's not a human being, so why am I bound by the things that I shouldn't be able to do legally with a human being? Why do I need consent? Why can't I have this portrayed and it be considered graphic or whatever? Why can't I have a child's image in this video? The threat that AI poses is something that can't even be covered in a podcast, but it can be understood to be the cause and effect of being able to leverage this legality when we take the human being out of it is going to open the floodgates for so many other things that are going to cause ripple effects and issues in the work that we do.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And, we are of the same mind, and I know many of our colleagues are, that pornography drives demand for sex trafficking for real humans, right?
Question.
And so if we're talking about the use of AI in pornography, just like you said, it could be a child. Maybe it's not even a child. Maybe it's an adult, right? But there's no requirement for consent anymore. You can act out elements of harm, which we already see in pornography being completely mainstream, misogynistic behavior, violence, and even torture. So how much more whenever you remove any type of kind of limitations of a human, objecting, right? And you remove that. And so now we're talking about all systems go, essentially, right?
Yeah,
The things that may have held people back a little bit in a sense or restrained them now are removed.
Yeah. And to each their own, right? What's the big deal? It's none of your business. Y'all aren't the sex police. All the things we've heard and we understand. God knows we do not want to be the sex police. But we do want there to be an informed decision-making process. And pornography just completely hijacks all of that.
Yeah.
It's hyper sexuality, everything about that changes the way the brain functions. And so when we're talking about, what's possible when this happens, the biggest concern, I think, is as we remove the human being and we start to get back to, okay, well, this is just a digital portrayal. This isn't even a person. Like you said, it not only removes a person, but it removes the cause and effect of what we're conditioned then to think is acceptable.
Right.
We have seen pornography get more and more aggressive and violent over the years, up to and including, and I really hate to use this horrible term, but snuff films, things where people are harmed or killed.
Yeah. In real life.
In real life.
Right.
And these things were pushed further and further and further because the conditions changed. If we want to believe that somebody who does pornography just goes in and applies for a job, fills out an application, says, I'm comfortable with my sexuality, I'm good to go. We don't have to look very far to know that's a lie.
That's right.
And that the industry is predatory.
Yeah.
And it's not just predatory on the people in the industry, it's the viewer.
Absolutely.
The men that we work with in fighting demand and the guys that are arrested in solicitation, we ask a number of questions. And one of them is, are you watching the same pornography now that you were when you started? 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago? And invariably, it is escalating. It escalates to something else. I remember when I struggled with porn for like 7 or 8 years. Most of the time, I didn't know I was struggling because it was all normalized. Yeah, well, I'm a red-blooded American male. What's the big deal, right? I would see things that would pop up. And I'm like, nope, off limits, awful. Now, I never really got into some deep, dark hole, but it's there. And the minute we talked to her, like, I never really would have thought I would have ever paid somebody for sex. And I never thought of it connected to human trafficking. I never thought, it's not good for business to make that connection. AI is going to amplify that to an almost immeasurable amount.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like the fear of the unknown, right? We don't really know. There's so many benefits that can come from AI, obviously, right? And we've already seen some of that. We haven't fully tapped into the complete expression of what that could be, but we've also seen there can be immense harm.
And I think we have to bring it right alongside concurrent with conversations that we're having in our culture right now about sex and sexuality. Removing any judgment, personal opinion, anything. Let's just jump over to the psychiatric and healthcare world. We see conversations now about people saying, well, pedophilia is really not even a decision. I wrote this down because I think we need to truly come to grips with what we're talking about. So I wanted to quote this. So this is in Wired magazine. I saw it actually about a week ago before I knew what we were going to talk about today. And so I went back to it and caught it. Let me read this from you, 8/22 Wired magazine. This is quoting a psychiatrist. It starts it off by the growing consensus among scientists is that pedophilia is a biological thing in nature, and that keeping pedophiliac urges at bay can be incredibly difficult. What turns us on sexually is something we don't decide. We just discover that, says Dr. Fred Binlin. Now that is very, very concerning, that in and of itself. But let's just go a little bit further with specifically this subject of pedophilia. It's not because they have chosen these kinds of urges or attractions. They discover it through no fault of their own. That this is the nature of what has afflicted them in terms of their own sexual makeup. We're talking about not giving into a craving that is rooted in biology. This biology is legitimate and not unlike anybody having a craving for heroin. If we take that and we use this professional's opinion to justify pedophilia, which is in no uncertain terms what he's doing. I mean, I don't think anybody would argue with that. And we apply that to AI, because a second ago it was AI, it was virtual. It was, yeah, I know, but it's not actually a person. Do we understand the bridge now? Do we see the connection concurrent to what conversations are happening in our culture? So this is going to justify somebody saying, well, AI is just something that allows people to more safely go along with urges that are biological, that they can't control. In theory, it outrages me. In practice, it horrifies me. If you have kids, just our job to protect children, thinking about the amount of latitude that would happen in this conversation.
Yeah.
And how legally, currently, we have an infrastructure that's not ready for this.
Absolutely.
And 100%. So somebody can very easily look at statutes, look at cases, and say, well, it's freedom of speech. We already have failed to truly apply what freedom of speech is in terms of the damage that pornography does to human beings. It does not exist within that protection. And this would just take that much further.
Now let's talk about the role of VR. Because that's a little bit, I feel like it's a little bit, closer to home, a little bit more like accessible even. What do you see happening right now in the world of VR as it relates to pornography? And where do you see that going?
Well, I guess specifically we're talking about what exists, VR headsets, if you're not familiar with virtual reality, you wear your headsets, what have you, haptic suits that simulate stimulation that would otherwise be. So I think if I'm watching this podcast and I don't do this for a living, I'm like, what's this guy talking about? What are they talking about? I would start to lean right now to the side of, you're judging people's sexual preference. I get that. But let me compare this. What we're talking about is form and function. Form is the haptic suit, the VR headset, my phone, that website, my TV. That's the form what I'm using, the medium. What I'm actually seeing is also form in a way, but what's the function? How does that influence my brain and how I think and what I believe about this? And the cause and effect is undeniable. The conditioning effect on your brain through consuming pornography. So I'll take you through something very, very quickly that I take through the guys that are in our program, and I took it through some school teachers this last weekend, talking to them about it. What we're experiencing is the world's most perfect sales cycle on a porn site. Here's what I mean. We've talked about this maybe even in another podcast, but I want to revisit it because it's relevant to this. I go on to see this image in this video. That's what I'm there for. Okay, I watch that. This webcam commercial now pops up for me to engage, not with me in a video, but me in a person.
Right.
Even though it's virtual, again, that stair step, right?
Yep.
And then when that isn't enough, I see over here on the same page, the sales cycle, free. Okay, you pay for it, it's virtual. Okay, you pay for it, now you can experience it. And this is a story that men tell us. In this notebook here I won't get it out, but I will tell you that I have a list of 14 men that we've talked to in the last 2 operations with law enforcement at the point of arrest. And they tell us with regularity. In fact, I asked them, I said, some guys here are telling us that they were online and that's how they found this place. Tell me. And they say, well, I was online and I saw this link and I clicked on that to meet local girls, but then it was another site altogether. And I've done that before, but I never acted on it. But this time I did. And now I'm here sitting in handcuffs. Like that is the flow. They just described that sales cycle.
Yeah.
So let's take VR and all these other things that are a delivery mechanism and are essentially form, but the function is the acting out behavior. And now we are going to amplify that with something as aggressive as AI pornography, VR, and then start taking some of the inhibitions out that are going to affect people in real life.
Yeah.
The pain and struggle is not virtual. It's real.
And we've seen it with other advents of technology, right? The internet didn't decrease demand. It exponentially increased it. And not only that, but it became more degrading, more violent. Child pornography exploded. So there's no reason to believe that, and the evidence doesn't even bear out, right? That, we're going to develop more technology and now suddenly the demand is going to be reduced and people are going to be more humane to each other, right? No, it's not how it works.
It doesn't. And it comes back to the same thing because we could then go ahead and look at legalizing prostitution as an example. We kept hearing, well, it's going to be legalized in other countries, so now it's legal. We can regulate it and everything will be fine. And say, I challenge you to go to the research and find the country where it's working well.
Yeah. Where women aren't being harmed.
Demand. Exactly. It didn't reduce demand. I can't remember. I think it was Melissa Farley, but it was somebody, and I'll credit them if I ever figure out who it was. Go look it up. There will never be enough willing women to satisfy this demand from men. the thought that we could legalize it, flip the switch, and now everything's going to be fine is just another way to say, well, this will make it, no, it will increase demand, and it has, and trafficking has increased in every market that I've researched on that. And so those things, you cannot supplant that by increasing more demand. And the same is true here.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to create this catalytic accelerant. And now we're going to do it in a way that our next generation, I mean, it's terrible to think that the average age of first exposure to pornography is 9 to 11 years old. That's horrifying. If we said that 5 years ago when we were fighting a robot sex brothel, people would still be horrified when the number was, I think, 14 and a half. Our kids are going to grow up in this. And our culture is going to grow up in a way where people who are accredited, mental physicians, are going to say, yeah, but it's a biological fundamental thing. We've got to understand that this isn't a morality issue as much as it is a health issue. Now, I know what I believe morally speaking of it, but the next person may not believe that morally speaking. But you cannot tell me that the brain is not conditioned. Science shows that it is.
Yeah.
You take something in, the cause and effect is that it changes the brain chemistry. It has a reward system of a stimuli and then a result, and then you act out because you're motivated to do so.
Yes.
Now, include something as dangerous as this and that, and you're going to have the same relationship.
Yeah. And not only do you need more pornography, more deviant pornography, right? So in that way, your brain is changing, but it also works to decrease your executive functioning or the users, right? So whoever's watching pornography, it changes that part of your brain. So, impulse control, long-term planning, empathy for other people. I mean, those are real harms that if we even take out the morality piece or the harm of the women or children being filmed, and the pain and torment that causes, right? If you just look at the buyer, if you just look at the user's experience and you look at their long-term effects, and you mentioned ED earlier, I mean, we're seeing a range of not just psychological effects, but biological effects where it is harming their interpersonal relationships, their ability to work a normal job. Just basic life functioning.
And they're not informed consumers. They don't understand that's where they're going. They don't understand the cost. I mean, there are things in life you can't control. Literally right now, there's a trash can, a trash truck. If you can't see it in the shot, of course it is. We can't control that. We can control how we respond to it. Whenever you're going into this sales cycle and you're consuming pornography, and I'm taking it as a personal challenge to be louder than that truck. And I'm winning. Am I not? I'm winning. If you're able to really bring that mentality to this, you start to really understand this is not an informed consumer base.
That's right.
The porn industry does not care about the consumer. It does not care about the person in the scene. You are a match. As soon as you're used up, you're thrown away. There's there's millions more in the box.
That's right.
We are talking about what is that uninformed decision making and what are the consequences that person alone and their family are left with.
Yeah.
It's not only irresponsible, it really is, if you look at it, it's a tragic trap that even the porn industry, they know that they have psychologists working in their industry. They develop things that will bring you back as a customer.
It's a tech company, right?
It is a tech company.
They're there to attract and lay hold of your attention.
That's right.
And they do it with wisdom.
That's right. And that's why we spend time in our other podcasts talking about pornography. Yeah. It's not from a judgment perspective. I've said many times, I think I said it in this podcast, I struggled with it myself for years. When I understood that there was a cause and effect and that it was changing really who I was, and I was in conflict with that, and I got help and I didn't, I know what it is now. It's the same thing as if I was taking a drug or if I had a dependency on alcohol. It's the same thing.
That's so good. So I know we could talk so much. There's so many conversations that need to be had around the use of AI and what our future holds, especially as it relates to the sex trafficking industry. I mean, we're not going to be able to, like you said, cover all of them today, but I think it's good to begin the conversation, and it seems like, from my perspective, that, as you said, our legislation is not equipped. No. I mean, our social structure, our governmental structure, we're just really not equipped for this type of technological advancement. But now's the time. We need to hurry up up and get in front of this as much as we can.
Exactly right. And the information from this podcast and others like this, again, we can't decide what happens to us. We can't decide how we respond. I hope that this is less fear and more, okay, I need to understand this.
Yeah.
Because the more we understand this, we start to get involved, whether it's legislative or with our anti-trafficking orgs. But more than anything, it starts at home.
Yeah.
How do I talk to my kid about these dangers? Deep fakes, revenge porn, all of that is already happening.
Absolutely.
AI is going to accelerate that.
Yeah.
We have to understand what it is to put ourselves in harm's way, because harm doesn't look like it used to. And when we're able to communicate that to our kids and each other, for that matter, and have empathy and vulnerability when we do it, that is how we start to understand and how we beat this thing. That's the most proactive thing we can do right now.
No, that's really good. Yeah, it starts at home, starts in your sphere of influence. I mean, those are things that you can do today, this afternoon, right?
That's right.
We are so thankful for you and for the
awesome.
work that you guys are doing. We love this partnership, Joe. If people, our listeners, want to find more about you or the organization, where can they find you?
You can find us on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Demand Disruption. Thankfully, our name is a little unique, so there's not a lot out there. You can find us pretty easily. And our website is demanddisruption.org. We're actually working on something pretty exciting, Disruption University. So a lot of the things that we're talking about are in the works. We hope to roll that out where people can take a deeper dive on specific subjects.
Awesome.
And so as we continue to work toward that, it'll be exciting. But yeah, take today, take information that you gather. Don't be afraid, be prepared, and do the work. Go to ElijahRising.org, come to our website and start to do the work to understand it.
Yeah, that's so good. Thanks, Joe. We really appreciate you. If you guys have enjoyed this podcast, like, subscribe, and we will check you out next time. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode. If you were inspired by this content today, please share, rate, and leave a review. Also, please consider making a donation at ElijahRising.org/donate. Your support helps us continue the vital mission to combat sex trafficking. Until next time.